Alrighty, welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us live. If anybody does want to join us live, you are welcome to join our live Wednesday night class. In order to join, you can join to the WhatsApp group, which is under the YouTube videos. Usually, almost everyone recently I've been putting a link, so you are able to join that way. Another announcement that Baruch Hashem we do have clipping already working on that is being worked on the back end, meaning that people we have someone very special that is clipping our classes, but we do need more help. So if anybody does want to join the team and want to make clips, please reach out to me at rabbizitron@torahanytime.com, RABBIZITRON at torahanytime.com. Tonight we are learning L'Fuah Shlema to Chana Kela Bas Etel, as well as to Refuah Shalema to Avram Yaakov ben Yal and Chava Bas Chaya Esther. We're also learning Leilu Nishmas Avram ben Rabbi Avram ben Chaim Yehuda and Yechazkel ben Rabbi Avram. Okay, so as Purim is coming upon us, and as we try to tap into the holiness of the day, as you know, when we have Yom Tovin, even if it's a week long, even if it's one day, it just seems to like come and go by so fast. And after everywhere, we're like, if only we were able to tap into that to that power. So we're going to try to get it out a little bit early to give some tips on how to tap into this powerful day. In general, when we look at holidays in the Jewish calendar, it's something that commemorates the past. So we have Pesach, that's commemorating the leaving of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. You have Shavuos, of getting them of Matan Torah, getting the Torah, and you look at Purim, it's where we're being saved from annihilation. And you think about it, you're like, okay, this is what happened in the past, and let's, commemorate. So we celebrate. So we're thankful, we're happy, we're in a good place, and then we move on. But we tend to forget there is a powerful underlying, action that we could tap into, and we could utilize that power of that day. When we look at holidays, it's not just something of the past. It's something that is current. It's something that is very, very present in our day to day. And you look at, for example, the holiday of Purim. So the holiday of Purim is where the Jews got saved. And many people think, I need some saving. I got stuff that I'm going through. I would love to, to tap into that power and to be able to save me for my issues. So we're going to discuss today what we can do to tap into this power. Just to give a little bit of a recap, the story of Purim happened in the Persian Empire in the 4th century BCE, and this was an empire that present day Iran, which is technically in the news. This is something that has been in this time period they were controlling over the entire world, over 127 countries in that time. So when you think about the story of Purim, this is a world power that was coming to annihilate the entire Jewish people. So we know the story, just give a little bit of a recap. So Ahasuerus went and he made a party. And if everybody could just mute themselves so we don't have any noise in the background. Ahasuerus made this party. This party was 180 days. This was a 6-month party, and this party in general had an overall like point to it. A purpose for it was to show its wealth, was to show that all his treasures that he had. Basically, it was I don't want to call it a show-off party because there was a lot to, on this party, but that was a big chunk of that party, to the point that Ahasuerus, the king, he wanted to show his power so much that if someone damaged anything during this party, because again, everybody's coming into the party, especially the ones obviously that was in his palace, and things are going to get damaged. There was no responsibility. There's no responsibility. Any unintentional damage, you did not have to worry about it. You did not have to, think about it. And now, when you go to someone's house and you damage something, people display. They pay a lot of money for whatever it is that they're displaying, and that costs a lot. Can you imagine the wealth and the expensive items that the king had? And no issues, no worries. You break a irreplaceable vase, no problem. You damage a painting that's priceless, no problem whatsoever. Wine flowed there without any issues, and it wasn't just like the wine that you I don't want to call out any of the cheap wines, but you're talking about the very, very expensive wine. We know that if you were 20 years old, you got 20-year-old wine. If you were 80 years old, you got 80-year-old wine, and like the amount of volume of a wine, of the price, everything was like so extravagant. Like, I'll tell you even furthermore, 180-day party, the menu never repeated itself. Every day was something else. Every meal was something else. To give you an understanding of the extent of this party, that the party for one day, again, it lasted for 180 days. The amount that it cost for one day, the amount that Ahasuerus put into that, was enough food to be prepared for 180 days, meaning that each day of the party was enough to last for 180 days of the party. So if you make a simple calculation to see how much money and how much food was put into this, that you just take the simple 180 times 180. Every single day would have lasted a 180-day party. So that means if you take 180 times 180, you have 32,400 days of food that he had over there. And if you just put it you divide it by 365, according to the solar calendar, the solar calendar, you have 88 years of food and money that was spent in there. Meaning that every person that went into the party would have enough food, enough drink, enough everything to last that person for the entire lifetime of that person. That's how much that Ahasuerus put into this party. And we know the Jews went into this party. The Jews were not supposed to be part of this party. Reasons we're not going to go into all that detail. We spoke about it, quite a few times. But this is where the turning point was, and the spiritual turning point was, where the Jews were where they weren't supposed to be, and then they were decreed that there are bad stuff coming up, for them. King Ahasuerus' wife, Vashti, at the time, also did not listen to Ahasuerus, and because she failed to follow his orders, he went and he executed her. Just to give you a little bit of the mindset of who this king was. This king was a spender, was an extravagant, style person, that if he didn't like somebody in an instance, his wife, the person that he chose to spend the rest of his life with, because she didn't listen to him, he had her executed. And, a short while after that, Haman was an antisemitic, person that puts all the anti-Semites today, on the sidelines. He was appointed the prime minister. And he decided that he wanted to kill the entire Jewish people in one day. The 13th of Adar, right? Who made the girl, made the pork, and it was the 13th of Adar. Now, when you look at this king ruled over 127 lands, and he definitely had the power, because he put this into the, he signed this into the deal. It was the entire Jewish nation was going to be destroyed in one day. The Jewish people were scattered. They were scattered throughout the entire land, and he signed an executive order that all the Jewish people will die on a single day. And then all of a sudden, miraculously, with the help of Esther, with the help obviously of Kadosh Baruch Hu, everything just turned in one instant, and we'll speak about that. And it went in favor of the Jews. And on a micro level, in our own personal lives, we see that. Sometimes you're going through life and you're going through something very difficult, and you don't know how your salvation is going to come. You don't know where how it's going to turn out. And all of a sudden, when you're planning for the worst, all of a sudden, like you're flicking up a light switch, and everything changes on 180 degrees, and all of a sudden, everything that looked bad turned good, and everything worked out all in itself. This was on a macro level for the entire Klal Yisrael. So I want to tap into this. I want to tap into this power where all of a sudden, everything's bad, and then everything turned into amazing, superb. And I want to share with you something from the Nesivos Shalom. Now, we know the story of when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, when the Jewish people left Egypt. They were traveling in the desert, and there was no water, as there generally isn't in the desert. And they started arguing with Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says, give us water. And Moshe Rabbeinu's like, well, why are you arguing with me? Why are you testing God? God took us out of Egypt. And the Jewish people responded. It says, what? So you took us out of Egypt so that we could die over here in the desert? Is there not enough graves in Egypt? So Moshe Rabbeinu went, Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu went and he cried out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he cried out to God. And he says, what are we going to do? He says, we got, they need water. So Moshe Rabbeinu was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, take your staff, you're going to go to this rock, you're going to hit it, and then water is going to come out. Now, if we pause this for a moment, this is like a remarkable story. Like, you're talking about the Jewish people. They left Mitzrayim, and they had a whole series of complaints. And not only that, the next pasuk which speaks about it, by the way, if you want to look at it, Shemos in chapter 17, next pasuk speaks about that the Jewish people said a sentence that is very, very hard to understand. Hayesh Hashem bekerbenu im ayin. Is God with us or not? And the Zohar Kodesh goes and stops and says, what's going on over here? It says, V'chi tipshin havi Yisrael. Were they foolish? Was the Jewish people foolish? We know that are they asking if God is in our midst or he isn't? We know that the maidservant in the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, in the time of Kriyas Yamsov, they saw with prophecy what Yecheskel, the prophet, did not see. Meaning they had such a high level of prophecy. They saw miracles upon miracles. They saw God to the point that nobody else in the history of a common person saw God. They saw the splitting of the sea. They saw the 10 Makos. They saw themselves. They saw the annihilation of the Egyptian people. They saw so much. So how could they say, asks the Zohar, how could they say, where's God? Is God with us or God's not? Like, if anybody has a high level of emunah, it should be them. They saw God's hand. And the Zohar responds and answers and said they were seeking clarity. They weren't asking if God is with us or God is not with us. And listen to this beautiful explanation, beautiful understanding. Something that many of you may have had this question before, and this answer will just clarify so much. And as we know, when we look at the Torah, things may not always make sense. So sometimes you have to dig a little bit deeper. So today we're going to be going a little bit into the Kabbalistic realm. The Jewish people at the time, they weren't asking, so explains the Zohar, if God is with us or if God is not with us. What they were seeking clarity was in how God relates to us. God, we know, has different names. And those names correspond to how God relates to us, relates to the world. So we know, explains the Nesivos Shalom, there is 3 basic stages that God relates to the people. Now, the first 2 is very obvious. The third one is going to be a chiddush for most. So the first one, we know that God relates to people through teva, through nature. Right? God created nature. Nature will work a certain way, and that's how God relates to the people. Then there is step number 2. Step number 2 is what is called lemaila min hateva. This is above nature. Think about it like a miraculous thing, where God goes above the natural order of things, and this corresponds, by the way, to the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. This is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Yud Kei Vav Kei. This name, this method above nature was introduced to the world by Yetzias Mitzrayim, by the exodus of Egypt. And as we know, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu in Shemos chapter 6, verse 2 and verse 3, it says, "Vaydaber Elokim el Moshe," God spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, "Ve'era el Avram, el Yitzchak, ve'el Yaakov." I appeared myself to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, bekel Shakai, with the name of Shakai. Ushmi Hashem, and the Shmi Hashem, the name of God of Yud Kei Vav Kei, lo nedati lehem. I did not become known to them, meaning they did not know me in this aspect. They did not know me in this attribute, in the way that I correspond with the people. And this we see when Paro, he refused to believe this. Because what did Paro say? When Moshe Rabbeinu tells Paro, Hashem sent me, who's your God? Yud Kei Vav Kei, he sent me. And Paro responded, Mi Hashem asher eshma b'kolet. I don't know this Hashem. Now, this is something that always, bothered me in the back of my mind. But what do you mean? The Paro, okay, fine, you could say he was arrogant, and he was. And you could say everything, about him negative, and it's true. But they were very spiritual people back then. Granted, they were rooted in idolatry, but
they were spiritual people. They knew all the gods. Like, that's what they dealt with. We know Avram Avinu's father was a god dealer. Like he dealt in idols. Like, it was a very popular thing. So Paro did not hear about God? And the answer is that this name of God was never notified, even to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, only Kel Shakai. And Moshe Rabbeinu is coming and says, wait a minute, it says, who's sending you, says Paro. It says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but in the attribute of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Mi Hashem Asher Ashma B'Kolei. Who is this Yud Kei Vav Kei? Never heard of this name before, never heard of this God before. And that's why Kadosh Baruch Hu says in Shemais, in chapter 7, verse 5, V'yedu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. And Mitzrayim will know that I am Hashem. Which attribute is referring to? Yud Kei Vav Kei over here. This form of miraculous, this form of above nature, came known to the world in Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we have over here so far two. One is nature. Number two is something l'mayla min hateva, above nature, and that is through the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Says in the Nesivos Shalom, there's a third. And the third is more exalted, more miraculous than the second and the first. And this is the title of Atika, which is the ancient one. This is something Atika, like it's something that is stima mekol. It's something that is concealed behind anything. It's a hidden name. And the name associated with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with this, is the name of Ayin. Ayin, Aleph Yud Nun. This is the name. And this reflects HaKadosh Baruch Hu's power, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, power is not the right word, the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu relates to the people. And explains the Zohar HaKadosh, that what Klal Yisrael was asking at the time, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im Ayin. Is Hashem here? So they were stuck in the desert. So it says, wait a minute. So the Jewish people are asking, is Yud Kei Vav Kei, is that the attribute that we're dealing with over here? Or is it Ayin? Is it Aleph Yud Nun? Is it a different level? What's the Ayin? The Ayin is L'mayla v'L'mayla min hateva, meaning that is above and above the miraculous of going above nature. So this was the question, and this became evident. This name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we said the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah, we're a little bit deep, but try to bear with me. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. The name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Yud Kei Vav Kei, that was by Yetzias Mitzrayim. The name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Ayin, this came through the episode of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of Kriyas Yamsuf, by the sea. And we see this where Klal Yisrael went, and they were stuck by the water. The Egyptians were chasing them. They had nowhere to run. V'yitzaku b'nei Yisrael el Hashem, and they screamed out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'yomer Hashem al Moshe, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers Moshe, ma titzak alai, why are you screaming out to me? He says, why are you crying out to me? Explains in the Nesivos so amazing, so clear. He says that the prayers were directed to Hashem's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hashem responded, Ma titzak elai, why are you calling the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei? You want to overcome Mitzrayim right now? You want to enable Kriyas Yamsuf? You want to enable the splitting of the sea? You have to appeal to something that's even greater and above the nature, the attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is L'mayla min hateva. You got to even go above that. It's there. The miracle is so great. You got to go above that level. And in order to go to above that level, we'll have to see how it actualized in the story of Purim. And this is what happened in the story of Purim. The story of Purim is something very, very fascinating. The Jewish people were decreed to be annihilated, to be destroyed, to be gone from history, to be erased from history, because of the sins at the time. They went to the party, they did things that they weren't supposed to. And it was decreed. We all know that the decree was by Ahasuerus. But we know also that whenever the name Melech is written in the Megillah, and it's not accompanied by Ahasuerus, it's referring to Melech, Malchi Amlachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's referring to God. And what was happening during this time is that it was decreed by Ahasuerus, and it was also decreed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that the Jewish people would be destroyed. Meaning it was decreed by the king and below, and it was decreed by the Melech Malchi Amlachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now, in order to appeal to this decree, you can't just go l'mayla min hateva. You have to go really, really above that, and that is to the level of the attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Ayin. So we have to ask, we have to say, so how do you tap into that? how are they able to be saved? How are they able to be saved in the Kriyas Yamsuf? And how are they able to be saved in the story of Purim, where everything was doomed for destruction, everything was doomed for failure, and everything all of a sudden turned around because they tapped into that attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Ayin. And that, when we look into the episode of Kriyas Yamsuf, we see that the Bnei Israel and Moshe Rabbeinu, they went and they screamed out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded, why are you screaming to me? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them exactly what you need to do. He says, you want to tap into the level of Ayin, you want to tap into the level that I will be able to go and save you, you have to do something. And that is Daber el Bnei Israel, which is the way that the pasuk, the verse continues, Vayisau, let them go in. This is in Shemot chapter 14, verse 15. The calling, the action that was needed at this time was something of supreme Mesiras Nefesh. They had to put their lives. He says, you want to tap into this power? You have to do a extreme level of Mesiras Nefesh, and that's, you just got to go into the water. And this is what Nachshon ben Aminadab did. He went into the water till it was, and this is what the Klai, so they went till it was into the next, and then all of a sudden the water was split. In order to secure, in order to tap into that Yeshua, that salvation, there has to be that Mesiras Nefesh, that like putting in everything on the line. And we look at this, and we see this also in the Chet HaEgel, in the golden calf. Moshe Rabbeinu did the same thing. They were sentenced for clear. They were sentenced for destruction. And what did Moshe Rabbeinu say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to destroy the Jewish people. They went and they sinned with the golden calf. And Moshe Rabbeinu went over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says, Va'ata, now, im tisach hatasam, if you're going to go and you're going to erase their sin, good. Then ayin, again, that same letter is Aleph Yud Nun. V'im ayin mecheni na mesefrecha. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? He says, erase me from your name. Meaning Moshe was referencing to the supreme, elevated hanaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of ayin. He says that if you're going to go and you're gonna forgive them, then forgive them the standard way. But if not, then I'm going to put my life on the line. Mecheni na mesefrecha. Says the Nesivos Shalom. He says, "What is mecheni na mesefrecha? Mecheni na mesefrecha means erase me from your book. What book are we referring to? We're referring to the Sefer Achayim, the book of life. Meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you don't save the Jewish people, erase me from your book in this world. Erase me from the book in the next world. Meaning, erase me from everything. I lose everything. Moshe Rabbeinu put everything on the line. Many people, if they go and they want to, Mesiras Nefesh, right? They want to go and they put everything on the line for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So they know when they got up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Someone goes and puts a gun in someone's head and says, bow down to this idol, I'm going to kill you. And they do Mesiras Nefesh and they say, you know what? You can kill me, no problem. And that person gets killed. They go straight into Gan Eden. They go straight into the next world. But what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing over here was, no. He says, erase me from everything. I lose this world, I lose the next world. He was putting everything on the line. He's reducing himself completely, and this is the secret, he was reducing himself completely to ayin. Ayin means nothingness. He says, I'm reducing myself to nothingness. In order to tap into this level, to this power of attribute, this, you could tap into it, you have to have that Mesiras Nefesh, you have to have that Isbatlos, and you have to have that Mesiras Nefesh, and we're going to explain. And this is the secret. If all gates are locked, if all ways of salvations are locked and there's nowhere else to turn, and even when the hanaga of l'mayla min hatava, when you go above nature, even miraculous, is not going to be sufficient, HaKadosh Baruch Hu reciprocates when someone puts in the ultimate sacrifice. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then God puts forth a Yeshua. And this is what happened during the time of Purim. During the time of Purim, the Jewish people were set to have a decree of total annihilation. This was written down here, and it was written up above. And, Esther switched everything around. And how did she switch everything around? Listen to this, how fascinating it is. This is like mind-blowing, this info. If you get this stuff, it's just, you jump out of your seat. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. Esther goes over, Mordechai goes over to Esther and says, you gotta help us out over here. The Jewish people are going to be destroyed. And Esther responds to Mordechai and says, I haven't been called to the Melech. I haven't been called to the king for 30 days. This explains in Nesivos Shalom, this alludes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning that for the past 30 days, all the prayers that were leading to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Melech Malchi HaMelachim, were all locked. There was nothing. The gates of the salvation were all closed. Meaning that there's nothing that can be done. So Mordechai responded a very, very interesting response. In Esther chapter 4, verse 14. If you're going to remain silent, if you're not going to do something right now, so the salvation of the Jewish people will come from a different place. We have to stop over here. Like what's going on over here? Like the decree. He's giving a pep talk right now, Mordechai. And Esther is like, I'll try anything, but I've been praying, I've been doing it. Everything was locked. The Melech, the king, didn't call me in for 30 days. And what did Mordechai responded? Oh, if you don't figure it out, if you don't do something, then salvation is going to come from another place. Like, how is that an encouraging statement to say someone who's putting everything on the line? So really what was going on over here, on a deeper level, that Mordechai, Al Pi Kabbalah, had the same Shorish HaNeshama, he had the same root of the soul as Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu was able to annul the decree through the Hanaga, through the attribute of Ayin of Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is way above the miraculous. And Mordechai informed Esther, it says, Revach v'atzal yamad laYehudim makam acher. The regular pathways that we know, right? We all know the pathways of Teva, of nature. We know the pathways of Lamala Min Teva, which is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Those are the regular pathways. We know that. But that's not going to suffice at this point. This point, the decree was on below and above. We have to go b'malkan acher. We have to go completely on a different level. And this is, he was hinting at the level of ayin. That is the only option. And Mordechai relayed this idea to Esther. And Esther double-clicked that idea, and she went forward with that idea. Because what was her response? She says, okay, if that's the case, and she knew the whole spiel, she knew what she had to do. Esther chapter 4 verse 16. It says, I'm going to go into the Melech, I'm going to go unannounced. And then she says, and when I'll be lost, I'll be lost. It says it twice. What was it? What was she saying? What is she losing out over here? Now Esther had an halachic dilemma because until now her relationship with Ahasuerus was forced, meaning that she was not held responsible. She never went willingly. She never went willingly to Ahasuerus. Now all of a sudden, this is being switched. She is going willingly to Ahasuerus to save her people. To save everyone, she is putting herself and physically and spiritually on the line. Physically, because Ahasuerus didn't call her for 30 days. And if you go into the king without being called on, that's it. It's death penalty. And if she's going in now on her own merit, she's not being forced, so she loses her next world. She's doing a huge sin. She's being with a guy. So this is what she says, V'chasher avadati. I'll put everything on the line. I'm going to make myself and nullify myself to a level of ayin. Like, I'm going to give up everything. This world and the next world. This world, Ahasuerus will kill me. Next world, I'm going to lose everything because I'm going in willingly. And this point was the turning point of the entire Megillah. The entire Megillah was like bat, and then in one instant, all of a sudden, everything started turning around, and that was right over here. This was the turning point, and this is alluded also in the Gemara and Chulin, which tells us Esther min Atara minayin. Where do we see Esther min Atara? Va'anoichi haster aster panai bayemahu. This is based off the Devarim chapter 31 verse 18, where it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to hide his face. Meaning that if you're stuck in a situation where God is hidden, you don't see God, like everything you try doesn't work. You pray, you do everything, and not the regular nature works, and not L'maylim and Ateva Yud-Kei Vav-Kei works. When I hide my face, it says that's when you know you have to tap into the level of ayin. The attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of ayin, where it's Mesiras Nefesh, which is just like the story of Purim, just like the story of Kriyas Yamsov. That's how you're going to be able to tap into the salvation that you so desperately need. And with this, we can begin to understand a fascinating point. We know that the Medrash and Mishnah tells us that Kol Hamayadim Yu B'Telem, all the holidays will be nullified when Mashiach comes. But v'yemei Purim einam b'telim la'olam. But the holiday of Purim stays forever. Now, the obvious question is why? Why is Purim so much greater than Pesach and Shavuos? Why is it so much greater than all the other holidays? And the answer is, when you look at the other holidays, how did HaKadosh Baruch Hu save us? He saved us l'mayla min hateva, above nature, through the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, just like Yetzias Mitzrayim was through Yud Kei Vav Kei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us from above nature. And what's going to be in the time of once Mashiach comes? Everything is going to be above nature. We're going to be living in a world that is above the normalcy that we're used to nowadays. Everything's going to be in an above level. Meaning we're going to be l'mayla min hateva. So when we're going and we're sitting, once Mashiach comes, we're going to be l'mayla min hateva. Everything's going to be above. So the story of Pesach, it's not going to talk to us the same way that Purim talks to us. Because Purim is not l'mayla min hateva, it's l'mayla min hateva. And that is the level of ayin, that is the level that even the time of Mashiach, that's not something that's going to be commonplace, and that's why that holiday is going to speak up greater than all the other holidays. So now we see that Purim has something that sticks out more than anything else, and that is the ability to tap into that level of ayin, the level of attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is above the miraculous. And this, by the way, also is something very interesting. This was a test that happened also to Acher. Acher was a Tana by the name of Elisha ben Avua. Elisha ben Avua was a great rabbi that went off. We're not going to go into all the details. We have a whole class explaining that. But there was a huge rabbi that went off the derech, and there was a big heavenly voice, a baskel that came out, and it said, "Shuvu banim, everybody return, chutz mi Acher, except for Acher." So what did Acher respond? Acher said, since I was banished from the next world, let me indulge in the pleasures of this world. Right? This is based off the Gemara in Chagiga, page 58. So, it says in the Nesivos Shalom, Acher here learned the wrong lesson. He says, you know what was going on here? The true intent of the message? Acher was very far off. In order for him to come back, the test that he had to do was to connect to the level, to the hanaga of ayin. He had to connect to that level of nullification of himself. Meaning that his nisayon, his test was, is he going to remain loyal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu if he loses everything? If he doesn't have this world, is he still going to connect? Because he was at that point, that was the only thing that was going to help him. He failed where Moshe and Mordechai and Esther had succeeded. They knew that when it comes to a certain point of no return, there is one point that could always tap you back. There's one secret way that you're able to tap into that, and you're able to get your salvation no matter how far off you have fallen. And this is why we have to go on Purim. We have an obligation. We have an obligation on Purim to go and drink to the point that we don't know the difference between Haman levarach Mordechai. The Megillah page 7b. We know that we have to get to that point. We don't know the difference between blessed is Haman and cursed is Mordechai. And the understanding based on what we're discussing today is that your joy, your happiness in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it should be no matter what category you fall. If it's a category of Haman, or if it's a category of Baruch Mordechai, or whether it's vice versa. Meaning if you're going to get a portion or you're not going to get a portion. If you nullify yourself to the point that you're just like, God, I'm with you till the end, no matter what, no matter where I fall, that is the tapping into that we need to. And that's what we say, we drink until we don't know the difference. Meaning because it doesn't matter where you stand. You could be Baruch, Haman, or Mordechai. You can be Baruch Mordechai Hara. It doesn't matter if your focus is just to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says God, I'm here until the end, no matter what. That is the point of Purim. That is the power of Purim. And when you tap into that, you have the power that's unleashed inside of you, that you can achieve the salvation that you would never ever dreamed of. And that is the potential of Purim. The potential of Purim, of his battles, of nullifying yourself, and Mesiras Nefesh, and giving everything up for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the power every single year. There's an unprecedented opportunity for every Jew and every person to get to this level of dedication to nullify oneself into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you could say, well, I'm not on that level. I can't do that. That's the power of Purim. Purim has the power. It's not just something that we commemorate. It's not just something that happened. There is a special power of Purim that you could tap into, that you could go and zoom into that power and realize that power within you. And once you realize and once you actualize that power within you, the salvations and the blessings that come out of it is never ending. And that is why there's no such thing as a person is lost, is completely lost. And this is why there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Aruch tells us that kol misha poished yadai little, whoever sticks out his hand to take, you give someone's coming to, you don't start asking where are you giving and who are you giving to. You give for whoever wants. Why? Because the heaven's attitude towards the supplicants, towards people that are asking, is midah keneged midah, meaning that no matter where you stand, you have the ability to tap into this. That even if something is nichtam b'tabas hamelach, even if something is signed by the King of Kings, and it's something that looks like there's no more hope, on this day it can be retracted. On this day you can reverse everything. That means that even if all the gates of prayers are locked, Purim still gives you that opportunity to get a Yeshua, meaning that this Purim, this day, is the greatest Eis Ratzon of the entire year. You have the greatest opportunity, explains the Arizal, that the divine illumination that shines forth on Purim is more than Yom Kippur, it's more than Shabbos, it's such a high level that we could tap into it. The Rabbi Berditchev tells us even like a huge chiddush that, the standard procedure of, the high holidays, we know, is that the divine judgment is on each person, on each individual on Rosh Hashanah. And when's the final sealing? We all know on Yom Kippur. However, we also know that based off divine mercy, there are times where the seal is postponed until Hanukkah. Says that the Berditchever that even times of the Gemar Chasima, meaning the final sealing, is postponed until Purim. Meaning that for some people, and especially if you tap into it, that whatever was sealed on Yom Kippur, whatever was sealed or wasn't sealed yet, whatever was decreed on Rosh Hashanah, you still have the ability to change it until Purim. That's the power of Purim. Because even why does Purim stand out? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu wait all the way until Purim? Because this is a time where even the gates of everything has been locked for you. It's been shut from all angles. Purim is the time that you could open those gates. If someone demonstrates a complete dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they nullify themselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the point of ayin, to the point of nothingness, they're able to tap into the attribute of ayin. And they will be able to get into that level of salvation beyond their imagination. Now let's try to make this a little bit more practical. There was a boy who came from a good family. He was a good boy, like all around, like a good kid. But the problem is that he just couldn't learn. Like, as much as he tried to learn, and the amount of effort that he put in, and he put in effort. This boy was a stubborn boy. He put in effort day in and day out, but nothing went in. Like, he worked so hard and nothing went in. And one of the rabbis in the school, they saw this boy working so hard, so they took him under the wing. And the rabbi went and he taught him the Gemara. And he taught him, and he taught him, and he taught him, and he taught him. And the boy just didn't get it. Like, nothing went in. And the rabbi was baffled. Like this boy was really trying. It wasn't like, sometimes like the rabbi is trying very hard, but the boy is like spacing out. And like, okay, fine. Obviously, they're not going to get in. But this boy was like focused. He was listening, and he just like nothing went in. And the rabbi was baffled. He's like, I've never dealt with this before. So he decides that he's going to take this boy to Reb Chaim Kanievsky for advice and for a blessing. And they go to Reb Chaim, and Reb Chaim Kanievsky asks this boy, says, when you pray, do you ask for success in learning? So the boy says, of course. He says, not only do I ask, I cry and I ask that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God should open up my mind so I could be able to understand the Holy Torah. So the rabbi responded, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky responded, he says, I want you to take upon yourself to always daven with a minyan. Never miss it, even if you'll need to be Meiser Nefesh, even if you have to do Mesiras Nefesh for it. So I said, fine, no problem. This boy went back to yeshiva, and he was still like in the elementary school in Israel, and then time came for high school, for the yeshiva Gedalah, and he ended up getting to a very good yeshiva. Because he had good midas, came from good family, he wasn't the brightest, he wasn't the smartest, he didn't understand it, but he ended up getting in there. And a few years go by, and he decides he's going to visit his old yeshiva. He goes to visit his old yeshiva, and he finds the rabbi that devoted so much effort and time into him that he just didn't get anything. And he presents to him a pamphlet, and he puts it on his desk. And the rabbi, greets him, and he looks through the pamphlet, and he sees this is like this is chidushim in a Gemara, Masechtas Yevamos. Like very, very, whatever was presented before him was like a genius wrote it. Someone who knew a lot about this sugya, about this topic. And the rabbi is looking at the sources. He's like, wow, this is amazing. This was written by a huge Talmud Chacham. He's like, thank you for bringing this to me. So he says, which rabbi wrote this? And the boy is looking at him. This high school boy is looking at him. He says, what do you mean, which rabbi wrote it? He says, no, this is great. I'm flipping through it. It looks phenomenal, well written, well sourced, well everything. He says it's got to be by esteemed rabbi. And the boy is looking at him and says, no, I wrote it. And the rabbi is his mouth dropped down. He's like, you wrote it? What happened? So the boy, responds, and he says, when I got into high school, he says, I was very careful what the Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky told me, to always daven with a minyan. You're always careful. And one Rosh Chodesh, we went to a trip, and we got back home really late at night. And when we got back home, I was sitting on the table with my parents, and I was speaking about the trip. And it was late into the early hours of the morning. And then I all of a sudden realized I didn't daven Ma'ariv yet. I didn't pray yet. And, I was like, what am I going to do? All the minyanim were all done near me. He says, there's only one place, they lived in Yerushalayim. There's only one place in Zercha Moshe, in the center of town, that I'll be able to go and maybe find a minyan. But it was so late at night. So I was like, I was going back and forth, and I decided, what? I got to try. I got to do my Shtadlus. And, I went out and I realized there's no public transportation because it's way past midnight. So I decided I walked to the highway, and I said, let me try to hitch. Maybe someone will pick me up. And I'm sitting over there outside in the cold winter night in Yerushalayim, and no one's picking up. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. If nobody comes, he says, then I'm going to go home. 7.5 minutes later, there's a car that pulls up, and it's a guy that I knew from the neighborhood. And he says, where do you need to go? So I said, Zercha Moshe. So he says, oh, perfect, I'm going there also. So we go, I get into his car, we go and travel to the shul. We get to the shul, and we are number 6 and number 7. There's still 3 people missing. And we're sitting, and we're waiting for a minyan. And meanwhile, people are getting antsy, it's getting late. And people start, getting ready to leave. And I started begging them. I says, no, please, you gotta wait. Let's wait a little bit longer. Maybe we'll get a minyan. He says, I got so far. I says, I'm not gonna be able to go and daven with a minyan. And a short while later, another person came in. A little bit after that, another person. Finally, we had the 10th person, and we started davening Ma'ariv. He says, when I got into in Shemona Esrei to Chayin Hadas, he said, my heart just opened up. Something happened inside me. I don't know. I can't explain. And he says, I started to cry like I'd never cried before. Chayin Hadas is the blessing in Shemona Esrei. We can ask for wisdom. And I started asking God, please give me wisdom in learning Torah. Please open my eyes, open my heart, open my mind, that I can be able to understand your holy Torah. And I sat there and I cried for 3/4 of an hour. By the time I finished, I looked around, everybody was gone already. I looked around and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Should I stay? Should I not? It was almost time for Shachris. It was almost time for Vasikin. Let me stay for Vasikin. As I was staying over there, I decided, I'm here already. Let me open a Gemara. I opened up a Gemara, and for the first time in my life, I understood it. Like, things made sense. And I was loving it. And I sat over there and I drank it all in. And then it came time for Vasikin. People started coming in, and I prayed Vasikin. And then I went home, but I was so energetic. I never understood Gemara before, and all of a sudden I understand it. I went into my room, I opened up my Gemara, and I started learning. And this was Friday. It was Friday morning, and I started learning, and I learned all the way till it was time for Mincha, till it was time for Shabbos. And my father calls me and says, it's time to go to shul. He says, we went to shul. We went and we prayed and we came home, we ate the meal. My father saw me, he says, very tired, you got to go to sleep. You haven't slept in a while. He says, yeah, I'm going to go to sleep, but let me just learn a little bit. He says, I opened up the Gemara, the sweet words of Torah, that they talk to me like they've never talked to me before. He says, I couldn't close. He says, I learned nonstop until the morning. Shacharis came, I went and I davened, and then it came the meal, and my father saw that I was weak. Couldn't keep my eyes open, and he forced me to take a nap. He forced me to go to sleep. He says, but since then, every time I open a Gemara, it says all of a sudden, I'm able to understand it. I'm able to understand the Torah. I'm able to understand it in levels that I've never been able to understand before. And it says, and from that day on, everything changed. And it says, this pamphlet that I'm giving you here today was the Torah that I wrote since HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened up my eyes in the Torah. What was the turning point of this boy's life? When there was a point of difficulty. It was late. He came back from a trip. Should I do it? Should I not do it? There was a point of a test. Where do I go from here? And he went and he pushed. He was Meiser Nefesh. He says, when we are faced with a test, when we are faced with a difficulty, that is our greatest opportunity. It could be a test of anger. It could be a test of desire for sin or for whatever. It could be a test of not wanting to learn, not wanting to pray, not wanting to do a certain mitzvah, not wanting to dress a certain way that we need to. It could be some sort of a test. But just know, that test can be your turning point. When you go and when you're Meiser Nefesh, when you nullify yourself and you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to do this thing so badly, or I don't want to do this mitzvah so badly, and you push yourself, that has the power to unlock greatness that you have never ever unlocked before. And this, the Gemara in Brachas, page 28, tells us of an interesting question. Rav Papa asked Abaya, how come that we have in the earlier generations, they were able to perform miracles, but now in our generations, we don't? And he gives an example that in the earlier generations, when there was no rain, when the people just took off a shoe in preparation for fasting for the rains, the rain would already come down. Now people could cry, people could fast, and still the rain doesn't come down. Abaya responded, he says, the early generations were prepared to sacrifice themselves, their lives, to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. They had that serious nefesh that we don't have. They were dedicated in levels that we're not dedicated to. But if you're able to dedicate, if you're able to overcome, if you're able to be meiser that nef, you will be able to go and unlock potential and salvation that you have never been able to unlock before. And this is measure for measure, that if a person overcomes his nature for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will overcome his nature, or whatever it is that was supposed to be decreed for you, will switch for the good. So it could be something small. Obviously, the greater the bigger it is, the greater it is. But even if, let's say, you're tired and you don't want to get up and pray, and you get up and you pray, you're praying and you're not able to concentrate, and you decide, no, you know what, I'm going to go against my nature and I'm going to go and concentrate. You go and you learn usually one class, and you say, you know what, I'm going to push myself now. Instead of listening to some sort of podcast about the news, I'm going to go and learn another class. When I'm going to learn a class, I'm going to be able to pay attention. You're Meiser Nefesh. You go and you give yourself up a little bit. You go and you nullify your desire for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That has the power, that has the ability to unlock greatness and potential and salvation that you have never ever been able to touch before. And this, why the Mishnah in Avos, in the 4th chapter, the first Mishnah, tells, a very, very interesting, famous Mishnah. It's where the Mishnah is telling us who is Ezu HaChacham, who is a wise man, someone who learns from somebody else. Ezu HaGibar, who is a great, a mighty person, HaKovish is Yitzhar, is able to overcome his desires. It goes on. The question that the Medrash Shmuel asks is, why does the Mishnah start off with a question? Ezu HaChacham, who is a wise man? Just tell us. A wise man is someone who learns from everybody. Someone who's strong is someone who overcomes his yitzhar, his temptation, his inclination. Well, why are we starting off with a question? And the answer is, says the Medrash Shmuel, that when a person is born, they're born with certain attributes. A person could be born not smart. A person could be born not to be wealthy. A person could be born not to be strong. But you know how you could still merit that strength. You could still merit that wisdom. You could still merit that richness, that wealth. If you go measure, it's all measure for measure, midah keneged midah. If you go and you push yourself, if you go and you just put yourself in a level of that you're moiser nefesh, you go above and beyond what's your natural order of things, of the way that you're built, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will change his nature. If a person is destined to be weak, but they go against their nature, God will change and control his inclination. Meaning that's why it started off with a question. Meaning that you want to know how you could tap into that, just go and just try to overcome it. You might not succeed. You might not always succeed. But once you start trying, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you that wisdom, is going to give you that wealth, is going to give you that power. And this is what the Gemara on Rosh Hashanah, page 78, tells us. Someone who goes and overcomes his desires, overcomes his midas, overcomes who he is, they change everything for him. There are stories upon stories we're not going to go into now because we spoke about these types of stories before, where if someone gets embarrassed publicly and somebody runs over to them and says, no, don't say anything, just give me a blessing. I didn't have any children for 2,500 years. If you give me and they give them the blessing and they don't respond to anything and they get, and they have that child. We see stories after stories upon that. Why? What's the essence of that? The essence of that is that when you overcome your desire, your nature of who you are, there is a huge Eis Ratzon, because you just tapped into the level of ayin. You just tapped into the level that you nullified yourself. He says, I am nothing, I'm not going to respond. I am nothing, I'm putting everything for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm putting everything for God. You have the power of a blessing. You have the power of salvation that you have never had before. And this is the power of Purim. This is the power that if we're able to tap into it, we'll be able to see salvations that we've never seen before. And it doesn't only have to be in Purim. We're in Adar. You can start now. Whenever you listen to this class, whenever this pops into your head, whenever you come to some sort of test, just stop yourself for a second. Be like, if I overcome it, it could be small, it could be big, it could be mediocre, it could be partially win and partially lose. But if you overcome yourself just a little bit, you have the power of salvation. You have the power of blessing. You have the power that you have never had before. And this is the power, this is the attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of ayin, of nothingness, that you're able to nullify yourself, and that is l'mayla v'l'mayla min ha'teva. This is above nature, above nature. There was a king who ruled with a very iron fist. And anybody that disobeyed him automatically got killed. But he killed them. The death penalty was for a little bit for his entertainment. He had what was called the pit of death. And in this pit was a huge, huge pit. And in this pit, he had all the wildest, scariest animals that he could find. Whether he had the snakes over here that are poisonous, he had the lions, and he had crocodiles, he had animals over here that would just like even tiny animals like a spider that's gonna kill in a second, all the scorpions, the lions, the tigers, the bears, everything, just threw everything in there. Sometimes they kill each other and they threw more in there. But if somebody was had the death penalty, they would throw it in there, people would watch and nobody would go and mess up anything. And he decided that once in every few years he's going to give an opportunity. And the opportunity is as follows. He says this is known as the pit of death. Someone goes in from one side of the pit of death, whoever wants to, and if they're able to go through the pit of death and climb out of the other side, what the first thing that they ask for when they get out of that pit is going to be granted for them. There's one thing that's off the table, and that is to be king. You want to be second to king? You got it. You want to be a billionaire? You got it. You want to marry the king's daughter? You got it. You want to own a country? Whatever it is, you got it. This was a very powerful king, and he put this on the table. So the first time he put this on the table, he got a bunch of contestants that lined up in the entire country. It was like a stadium that everybody went up in there. And they see the first guy, thinks about how he's going to do. He's got his armor, he's got his sword, he's got what he's going to do. He goes in and he trains for this. He goes in, he jumps into the pit, and he starts running to the other side. He takes about 4.5 steps. And like a crocodile grabs him from the head on and just devours him within seconds. And all of a sudden, like, a bunch of people that were waiting online, they were backing up. They were like, you know what? I don't think this is possible. And then you had a few other people that were looking over there. They're like, okay, they were studying it. If I run over here, if I go over here, if I play this one to this one, and they're going to they had all these plans. I want to bring some meat in my pocket. I'm going to throw it over here. And you had the next guy, he has his full plan. He goes in. He's ready. He's psyched up. He jumps into the pit. He takes out from his pocket meat. He throws it over there. He throws it on the other angle. And the animals are running for the meat. And he is bolting through. He gets a little bit through. And all of a sudden, there's a snake that quickly coils up around his leg. And he trips down and falling. Within minutes, the snake swallows him whole. And then you have the other people that are sitting and lined up. And they're all like, I don't think that's going to happen. And they back up and no one else goes. And the next year, the king says, the same deal for today, the day of the pit, called it. This is, you get across, you get whatever it is that you want answered. And you had over there people that were going, people were looking, and they had one brave guy. He says, you know what? He says, got nothing to live for. He's going to try to do it. Like one of those guys that had like no plans and just going to figure, just like try to run the straight through without thinking of anything. He jumps in and just starts running. And he gets almost to the wall. And all of a sudden, they see him like just like smacking his head. And, like he got like some sort of bite over there. And he falls down within seconds. And they look a little bit closer. They see that there was a spider that got him, bit him, and he died within seconds. And once he hit the floor, all the animals convened in, and like it was like a cloud of smoke, and then he was gone. The king made sure to starve these animals before these events. And he goes. Nobody else wanted to go. The next year, the king says, anybody that wants, what first thing that you come out of the pit, you get answered. And nobody is going in. It's been 3 years. Nobody was succeeded. He's like, you know what? Like, nobody thought of, and people will sit there for an hour, 2 hours. People started going home. They're like, okay, obviously no one's doing it. All of a sudden, they see there's one guy in the pit. Nobody do. He just like ended up in the pit. And you see him. He's trying to climb right back up where he came in. And he's jumping and he's trying, and he can't do it. And meanwhile, all the animals are slowly like inching the way closer towards him. And he doesn't know what to do. And, he's trying to climb up, and he can't. He's trying to climb up the way that he came in. And nothing is going. The crowd is cheering him, and he is screaming, get me out of here. I don't want to go. I don't need this. Get me out. Save me, save me, save me. Meanwhile, the crocodile was the first one on the scene. And he goes and he grabs onto this guy's foot. This guy was wearing a big boot. And the crocodile was shaking his foot, and this guy was so nervous, he just started shaking, and the boot got loose, and the crocodile was just like shaking, so the dust was pouring up, like flying up from the ground, and it was a full dust, smoke, and all the animals were discombobulated. They were like, okay, they figured the alligator over there, the crocodile over there, he's the one who got this thing, and the guy saw this is a chance. Everybody was distracted, so he started running like he's never run before to the other side. And he got to the other side. One shoe on, one boot off. He got to the other side. But the problem is, he was in a pit. And he couldn't get up. And he starts jumping and he can't get up. And all of a sudden, the animals realize that he's on the other side of the pit. And they start running towards it. And he's running from corner to corner to try to figure out how to get there. Meanwhile, as he's running and he's jumping on whatever that he has, and he didn't notice there was a bear that was sitting there in the corner. And he thought it looked like a rock or something. He jumps on it to try to jump up, and all of a sudden the bear, was resting, gets up, all the commotion, doesn't know what's going on, got scared, and he jumps. And this guy was on this guy's back, on this bear's back, and the bear jumped up. And this gave him just the amount of time to just like grab up the height, and he grabbed onto the ledge. And he's sitting over there on the ledge with one hand. And all the animals are snapping their mouth. Everybody, like the snakes, everybody is like trying to just like every animal is trying to get to this person. And this person tries with all his strength, puts his other hand on the ledge, and he climbs out. The first thing he does is he vomits, throws up, and then he turns around. And he says, who did it? Who did it? And he starts screaming, who did it? Who is the one that pushed me into the pit? And the king comes in, and the first question that he hears is, who is the one that pushed me into the pit? And the king says, so that's who you want to, that's your request, because after all, the first question that you ask, the first request that you ask, you're going to be granted. And the king went and says, this is the guy that pushed you, if they did an investigation, and that's it, your thing is granted. And the guy's like screaming, he's like, no, that's not what I meant, that's not what I went after. I got pushed in, I didn't think about it. The king says, a deal is a deal. The first request that you get after you come out, that's what gets granted. He says, how many times in our life that we get into a situation that we're put into a place that we're in a test, and we get angry, or we get upset, or we get frustrated, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you have one chance, one opportunity. Just overcome it. Don't get angry. Don't say, oh my God, how come this guy cut me off? Don't say, how could my spouse do this to me? If you stop for a second and you're Ma'aseh Nefesh and you say, you know what, wait a minute, like, you know what, I'm going to give it all for God. It says, okay, fine, so something happened to me, so whatever it is, I'm going to stop. I'm going to be Ma'aseh Nefesh, I'm going to be Mevatel myself, I'm going to put myself at the level of ayin. That's the time that you have. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, ask whatever it is that you want. What blessing do you want? What power? Whatever it is that you want, the salvation is in your hands. The problem is that we come to these tests and we're overcome by our desires, we're overcome by our nature, and we go and we jump to conclusions before we have the opportunity to even think, to say, you know what, God, I want to pass this test and I want this and this and this as a salvation, as an Eis Ratzon. This is the power of Purim. The power of Purim is that you have the power to overcome. You have the power to go and stop and go be Ma'aser Nefesh. This is the capacity that we have. And this is based off the three basic forms of Hanaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We know that you have the Hanaga, as a quick recap, you have the Hanaga of the Midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Teva, of nature. And then you have the one right above the Malam and the Teva. Then you have the one that is Ayin, that is a level that is above nature, that is above miraculous. This is what happened during the Chet HaEgel, and how Moshe Rabbeinu was going and he saved the entire Jewish nation. Mecheni na mesivrecha. He says that if you're able to go and erase their sins, good. But if not, this is the level that Moshe Rabbeinu and Purim, which Mordechai, which is the Sherish and Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, he told Esther, this is how you're going to go and save the Jewish people, just like Moshe Rabbeinu saved the Jewish people. He says, the ways that we have been dealing until now with Yudke Vavke and going and davening based of mercy, based of the attribute of L'malam Teva, is not going to suffice now, because it's already decreed from up above. And Esther got it and says, you know what, fine, I'm double tapping, I'm going full force, and if Hashem avadati, and if I lose everything, I'll lose everything, but I'll put everything on the line for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'll put everything on the line for the Jewish people. And that's why we come to the point of Lo Yada Ben Ar Haman LeBarach Mordechai. We come to the point, we tap into that power, that it doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter. And all I want to focus on is only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the Purim, what the Purim teaches us. A Purim, the level of isbadlos, of nullifying, of a level of ayin, of Mesiras Nefesh, of just saying, you know what, I have a desire, but let me stop. Let me me go against my nature. Let me go against my character trait. Every single year at this time, there's an unprecedented opportunity. We can nullify ourselves towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and because we nullify ourselves, because we put ourselves on the level of ayin, we tap into the level of ayin. And that could give us tremendous amount of Yeshua's, tremendous amount of salvation. And even if it's not a huge thing, even if it's not a great thing, even if it's something very small, it could bring us tremendous amount of Yeshua's, tremendous amount of salvation. Before we open up to any questions, we'll just say a quick kapitel Tehillim for Klal Yisrael, and then we will open up to any questions. As usual, we say Kapitel Kol Flamen for Klal Yisrael. Shir Malais, Mimar Makim Karasicha, Adonai, Adonai Shem Abikoili, Tiana Znacha Kashuv, Vaisa Kol Tachanunai. Im Abayne Stesh Maya, Adonai Mi Amoid, Kim Chaslicha Leman Tivare, Kivisi Adonai Kiv, so Nafshi, Vilidvaraya Chalti, Nafshi La Adonai, Mishamim La Beker, Shamim La Beker, Yachel Yisrael La Adonai, Kim Adonai Chesed Varbe, Maifedus, Behu Yiftes Yisrael, Mikol Abinisav. אחינו כל בית ישראל, הנשאונים בצרה והשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה, המקום ירחם עליהם, ויציאם מצרה לרווחה, מאפלה לאורה, משיבה לגאולה, השתה בעגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu help us, that we could be able to tap into this level, the power of Ayin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we could be able to tap into the salvation that not only that we need on a personal level, but also on a level of Klal Yisrael, that we could be able to finish with this war that we're dealing with from all fronts in Eretz Yisrael and locally, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring us to the Bias Goyal Tzedek B'Mehera B'Yameinu. Okay, let us open up to any questions. All right. Okay, these are comments. Yes, I will approve for regarding the WhatsApp thing. I'll approve it, in a little bit. Okay, here's the first question. What about Kriyas Yamsov? Isn't that above nature? So why is Purim still above nature than Pesach? So Kriyas Yamsov is actually, it's a great question, because Kriyas Yamsov is the level of above nature of Ayin. So there's two aspects. There's Kriyas Yamsov and Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim was a regular above nature. But what was different about Kriyas Yamsov than Yetzias Mitzrayim? Kriyas Yamsov was a level that not only HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved the Jewish people, but he destroyed any aspect of the Mitzrayim, meaning that the Mitzrayim, the Egyptian, no longer had any hold over the Jewish people. So when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, they escaped, they got out. They went out, however it is you want to explain it. They got out. But the problem is they're always going to think about, okay, well, my masters, which is the Egyptians, they're still out there. They could still come and get me. The level of Metzias Mitzrayim was a level that they're never coming back, because the Yidden, the Jewish people, they saw that the Mitzrayim died in Kriyas Yamsov. So this is a level that is way above the level of what was happening during the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that is why it was a level of Ayin. Okay, we have one more question. Last week I was deeply embarrassed in public, and due to a shock, I didn't and couldn't say anything, and just ran away and cried. I am usually able to overcome it when this happens, but this time I just can't bring myself to forgive the person, as I'm so tired of it being a frequent occurrence, and it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I know Hashem wants me to forgive them and sends me messages and reminders to forgive. This week, of all weeks, almost every shir or daily dose is just about mechila, but I just can't. What should I do? And if I forgive them, doesn't it still have a power? Should I wait till Purim to forgive them? Okay, excellent question. Very well put. So I get it. I definitely feel. And I definitely understand that, like, when someone hurts you emotionally, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a better person, I'm gonna forgive them. Like, it's not so simple. Like, you could say it, but not always do you actually mean it. It's not an easy thing, and this, in essence, is not an easy thing. So, to make it a little bit simpler, to make it a little bit easier, what I would recommend, like, everybody has something that they want. And I'm sure you have something that you want, whether, it could be to get married, it could be a salvation, it could be a family thing, it could be a health thing, it could be a parnasa thing, whatever it is. And meditate on that. Be like, this Baruch, I really need this. I really need this in my life. I really need the, X, Y, and Z. And I am so hurt. And you know how difficult it is. And balance out what you need and be like, I am fully forgiving this person. In the merit, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give me this, X, Y, and Z. But the trick of this matter is that in order for something like that to work, you can't say, okay, like a tit for tat, like, I'm going to do this, you do that, this for me. The way that you tap into this power is like, I'm giving up, like I forgive them completely. Whether you decide to give me or not, like this Baruch Hu, that's up to you. But I'm asking you. He says, I need X, Y, and Z. Please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please help. I'm forgiving that person because I know that's what you want me to do. He says, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please help me with X, Y, and Z. You have the ability to have an ace rotzon in your arsenal. Now, it's not easy, and tell you a secret, like, you could forgive now, and then 2 months down the line, it comes up again and be like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. And you get upset all again, which again, you still have another ace or somebody every time you forgive that, that person. But you have to balance it out that the harder and the more difficult that is, the greater potential, the greater power, the greater outcome that it has. So how difficult it is for you is just to tell you, is just showing you how powerful that is, that the power that you hold right now. The more that you push it off, the more that you don't hold. And that's why I say don't wait for Purim. It says do it right now, and ask whatever it is that you want. Ask for Klal Yisrael, whatever it is. And it's going to come up again, because you're going to forgive them, and then you're going to have in a bad mood or whatever, and it's going to come back up again. You forgive them again. You still have that Ace Rots and keeps on coming up. So definitely utilize the time right now to forgive them. And of course on Purim it's also important to forgive it again. It's a huge aspect, and it's not an easy aspect. So I definitely understand it. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help you. You'd be moachad and believe Shalom, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should pay you back bekefel keflayim with all the amazing things that He has in store for you and more. All right, looks like that is all the questions. May you all have an amazing, uplifting, spiritually, unbelievable Purim. And may we be able to tap into the power of Purim. May we be able to utilize the power of Purim to put ourselves on a level of spotless, to a level of Mesiras Nefesh, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should answer us for everything that you want and you need.